Okay, in today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about menopause rage. Now, let me kind of start out by saying I do not think that this side of the emotional roller coaster that we go on during perimenopause and menopause, I don't think that this side of it is talked about enough. I don't think that women are given enough strategies for it's not acknowledged, and so we're not given enough strategies for how to navigate this emotional upheaval in our systems, right? And so oftentimes when we feel these intense emotions, we think, oh my God, we're crazy. Like sometimes it happens and we honestly go like, what the fuck just happened? And there have been times where people might look at you like, oh shit, like what was that, right? Because you're so overcome by emotion so quickly that you literally don't often have time to think, and you just fly off on reaction. And it's usually not a good reaction, okay? And again, like I said, we don't acknowledge this. It's not talked about enough. People in careers that deal with women in menopause, like physicians, are not trained in menopause for the most part. So they don't know how to treat women. They don't know how to talk to us and help us to understand what all the symptoms are of menopause. And this menopause rage is real. It can come on quickly and it can affect our mindset in such a negative way. It can impact our ability to manage and regulate our emotions. It can put a real strain on our relationships, both professional and personal. It can affect our work. It can affect our marriages. It can affect our own ability to just survive day to day, because we feel like when this happens, oftentimes we feel like we've lost our minds. And so we will become enraged, we'll have this outburst in response, and then we feel ashamed and like we're crazy. We don't understand what's going on. And so then we're overcome with tears oftentimes. And so there's like this high, and then this low. And so it oftentimes will come out and appear to everyone else and to ourselves as like complete rage and anger and an outburst, followed by just uncontrollable sobbing. And so that you if this has happened to you, let me know. But let me give you a couple of examples. So have you ever like looked at your husband or your partner and thought, I cannot freaking stand you. I could just throat punch you right now. And this is the person that you know logically, and even you feel love for, you adore this man, but he does something, and in a split second you think, why am I married to this person? Just leave the room. Like you're enraged by, it can even be like this little thing that he's done for years, and all of a sudden on this day you cannot stand him, you do not understand why you married him, and you are just like enraged by his mere existence, right? He can't even breathe right. Or perhaps you don't really like your boss anyway, and you're noticing that you could jump across the table and choke him. You might not have liked him before, but you certainly haven't had homicidal thoughts and responses. And I joke, like, don't come at me. This is an over-exaggeration a little bit. But if you've had those kinds of experiences, look, don't worry. You're not crazy. This is a normal thing. It is something that happens during perimenopause when our hormones are just fluctuating in such drastic swings that our body is not used to it. Our chemical makeup is not used to it, and we are having these reactions that we hadn't typically had in the past. Okay, and I've got some strategies for you in this episode that I'm going to share with you to help you to manage that. But first, I want you to know what it is, why it's happening, and then let's talk a little bit about those strategies, right? Because I always think that if you can understand why something is happening, that you're going to be a lot more effective in implementing some, tips and strategies for managing them and controlling it, right? So first of all, let me tell you a little story. I have personal experience with menopause rage, and it still will crop up from time to time. I know that it does, and I have to be really aware and catch it so I don't have, a really outlandish reaction, right? I did a reel here recently where basically I used this audio from a little creator that I think is adorable. She and her husband do reels, but anyway, I digress. She did a reel with an audio, and it was an audio screaming, this outburst that she had in rage about her necklace and shirt, right? And I think her post had something to do with maybe PMS or something. Well, and I thought that is so appropriate also for as an analogy for how we can respond in these menopausal rage episodes, right? And so I used it and did a reel, and Monkey, our little Yorkie, who you've probably seen if you follow me on social media, or you've even heard him barking in the background in different episodes if you listen to my podcast. But Monkey, our little Yorkie, was in my lap. And when I turned that audio on to lip sync for the reel that I was doing, he thought it was me for real. And he looked at me like, what the fuck just happened, right? And I thought, how appropriate, on cue, that he gave me the look that if you've ever had this experience of flying into a menopausal rage state, other people may have looked at you in that same way, or maybe your fur babies did. And you may have even thought, holy crap, who was that just came out of my body, of my mouth? What was that reaction? Well, that very intense emotional response to something that may not have bothered you yesterday or last week or a million other times that it's happened, that is something that we feel very naturally during perimenopause and menopause. And that feeling can range from just irritability and frustration to full-blown anger and rage. And it may leave you, like I said, and those around you with that kind of what the fuck what just happened here, right? It is really due to hormonal fluctuations that affect your body on a neurological level too. And as a result, it can really affect your mood, and it can all of that is really at the base level kind of what instigates this intense emotional response. Think about when you were pregnant, perhaps if you have children, and when you were pregnant, you had this, all of a sudden you had this sort of uncontrollable, it seemed rush of emotions, and maybe you cried, or maybe you screamed or whatever, and then all of a sudden you were like, I don't even know why I'm crying, right? Or if you have daughters, especially, and you remember when they were anywhere from 10 to 13 years old, and you thought, oh my gosh, this little tween, preteen has just lost her damn mind for a minute. I remember this happening when our daughter was in middle school, and it was right before she started her period. She's going to just be thrilled that I'm talking about this if she ever listens to it. But it's true. I remember that happening. And, I thought, you're not going to make it to 13, kid, if you act like that. Well, perimenopause takes you on another kind of similar hormone roller coaster that actually can last for 10 or more years. And so it's not as brief as, the emotional hormone kinds of outbursts while we're pregnant. It's not as brief as the little tween time when our body's getting ready to, come into more of a mother or a womanhood state. It can last for 10 or more years. It's different for every woman, but there's a range of even up to 15 years. And so you're talking about a significant period of our life that, quite frankly, people don't know enough about to help us with how to deal with this transition in life. And so you combine that kind of mood affecting hormone transition that fluctuate a great deal too. It's not like they just change and then they stay there, right? You combine that with life's other sort of natural usual kinds of stressors, and you've got a perfect storm for menopause rage. So I want you to one of the things I want you to take away from this episode is that you need to embrace it as a natural thing. It does not mean you're crazy. It does not mean there's something wrong with you. It is natural, and I would encourage you to understand that so that you can start to reclaim your inner peace. And the way that you do that is to become aware of it and then really effectively start to implement and practice implementing these different tips I'm about to give you so that you can manage your menopause rage, okay? One of them is to just breathe. And I know that seems cliche and it seems very simple, but I assure you that there is science behind using breath to calm your body. When menopause rage starts to hit you, if you can take maybe 3 to 5 deep, slow breaths, it will help you calm your nervous system. And that will in turn help bring you back to a more centered, emotional, even space. If you are in the midst of this rage and you're around other people that have perhaps, created a situation where you felt like your emotions just went off, then I really encourage you to excuse yourself, remove yourself from that situation, and go take those deep breaths. Quick little story. When I, the several years before I left higher education and retired from my vice president's position, at a couple of years before I retired, we had a leader who was really difficult to be around. He was very difficult to work with. He created a lot of stress and strife for a lot of people in our system, and he was my direct supervisor. And he was just a really hard person to navigate a relationship with in a positive way. And it got to the point where, and then you couple that with, and looking back, my hormones fluctuating and me starting to experience some of these menopause rage episodes. And I realize now that during these really long meetings that he would hold, sometimes 4 and 5 hour long meetings, which is ridiculous, and a whole nother episode we could do on that kind of thing. But he also did some things that, in my opinion, were unprofessional. He micromanaged people. He seemed to interact with people in a way that made it appear to me that he was belittling people. He just didn't have very good communication skills, in my opinion, for someone who was in that level of a leadership role. And so over time, I now recognize that I was starting to have these very intense emotional responses to how he was treating other people and even how he treated me in these meetings. And so I was having to really be very mindful of managing a menopausal rage response in the middle of a meeting. There were times where I used the strategies that I'm talking about. This breathing strategy is one I used over and over with this person. But I excused myself from the table and from the room sometimes and walked out into the hallway and took multiple deep breaths to calm my nervous system, get me to center, get me to focus again, get in that more centered space like I'm talking about, so that I could handle myself in that meeting in a very professional way, and sometimes have to step in and fix shit that he had done. But anyway, I did not want to fly off the handle. And I had envisioned at times really flying off the handle and letting him have it in one of those menopausal rage states. But deep breathing is a way that you can get a handle on that, get that nervous system back under control, and not, look like a crazy person in the middle of a meeting. Another thing really great strategy for you to use is to move your body. Now, if you're engaging in regular exercise, that is a great strategy for helping to stave off these kinds of things. But if you feel these emotions coming on, you can definitely just use movement as a way to regulate your emotion again and get that nervous system calmed down. Even things like a super quick, like brisk walk, just a couple of minutes, taking a few minutes to do like dynamic stretching or, dancing. Like if you're in the office, close your office door and turn some music on and dance for just a few minutes. When you do something like that, your body will really respond in a chemical way that can help to calm it down. You will release endorphins, which will naturally lift your mood and help you to counteract that frustration, intent, like the anger, the rage that you're feeling. And it's definitely a way to counteract those episodes. Okay. The third tip that I'll give you, and this will be the last one for this episode, but I think it's really important to recognize that menopause is a transformative period in our lives. It lasts a long time. We have other kinds of hormonal transitional periods in our lives, like, when we're pregnant and we experience that rush sometimes of emotion from, we don't have any problem with saying, oh, it's just, my hormones, I'm pregnant, or it's just her hormones because she's pregnant. That's a period that's a very short period of time in relative, and this period in perimenopause and menopause can last 10 to 15 years. And so it's a big chunk of our lives. And we know little about, physicians get little training in treating us. We know little about how this works in the big scheme of things, even though it's become, a little more popular of late. But we're just kind of expected to glide through this period of life without really showing any of these symptoms, any of the ways that they affect us. And that's just not realistic. And so my third tip for you would be to really embrace self-compassion at this stage, and not in that like woo-woo way. That's not what I mean, but really accept that it is okay to feel a range of emotions during this time. Be kind to yourself around that. Don't beat yourself up around it, but implement the kinds of strategies that can help you to navigate this kind of emotional roller coaster in a much healthier way for you, and a way that's going to have a much more positive outcome, rather than negatively impacting relationships or your work performance or your professional relationships too. Things like, even journaling your emotions in the evening, reading something that helps you to calm down and makes you feel good, talking to a friend who's going through a similar experience, and make sure on social media that you're following accounts like mine, there you go, where you feel understood, where you feel good about what you're seeing. The information feeds your soul. It doesn't make you feel bad. It doesn't make you compare yourself. Where you just really feel positivity from those accounts, and unfollow ones that don't make you feel good. Another thing that you can do to practice self-compassion, I think, and really embrace this transition in a positive way, is to get yourself into a community. That can be an in-person kind of a community with girlfriends, or some kind of organizations that are in-person organizations. But I know that we're super busy, and these days it's really, oftentimes it's more realistic for us to join a virtual community where you can get facts that are grounded in research, where you can get tips for how to navigate these kinds of strategies, or these kinds of transitions, and the issues around them. And you can get support to manage menopause, right? All of that is going to help you to not only navigate, all kinds of, aspects of menopause, but with regard to meno rage, it's going to help you to release those pent-up emotions, understand how to be aware of them, understand how to navigate them and manage them when you do have them. Because you know what? You're not crazy, even if it feels that way sometimes, or if other people look at you like you are, or even if your fur babies do. I know sometimes mine do, but you're really not crazy. And if you're looking for an online community, I would welcome you if you're a woman who's over 40, highly driven professional woman who these kinds of things interest you and you are looking for support. I have a free community on Facebook called Total Wellness. If you look up Lori Dottie Total Wellness, it'll pop up and you'll see it. Or if you message me, I'll send you a direct link with an invitation to join. And I share facts there, I share tips there. I do all kinds of supportive coaching there, give all kinds of free resources, and I would be happy for you to join us. So check it out, and yeah, just meet us there and see what we have to offer. It's a great way for you to be with like-minded women. So I hope this was helpful today. I get a lot of questions around emotional kinds of aspects to this transition, and I just don't think that menopause rage is talked about enough. I think that it's just something that's sloughed off as a negative about women in a lot of different ways. And I think we should talk more about these things and be open to trying different ways of navigating them so that we can really normalize this long transitional period of life that all of us, if we're lucky enough to live long enough, we will absolutely all go through it. So I hope this was helpful. Definitely leave a comment, leave a rating. Let me know if you've experienced any of these, if you will use any of the strategies that I've talked about today. And thank you for spending time with me today. And I will see you right back here next time.